And now, to top off our program, it's my pleasure to introduce Roger Osorio, Executive Coach and Program Leader at IBM. And I also want to thank Pam Haas, who is on our foundation's board. She is with IBM for helping to bring you to us, Roger. Roger educates audiences from around the world on expertise development and the principles to peak performance, and facilitates effective learning and development strategies for IBM. And with that, please join me, and it's all yours.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Awesome. Thank you very much for that. Can I have everyone stand up very quickly? Stand up. So I know you have things in your hands. Just go ahead and put them down. All right. There we go. Can you shake someone's hand that you haven't met yet? That's what we're all here for. There you go. All right, sit back down. Love that energy in the room. Wow, very, very cool. So what I want to do with this time is take a lot of what you've heard. You know, some of these really big ideas, such as the ones that are presented in Etsy's white paper on, gosh, where they can go with providing different types of security for people that are, you know, in part of the gig economy. What Daniel was talking about, a lot of these challenges, and with getting people on board, the buy-in part. And then the lack of action, the inaction that is happening around some of these ideas. A lot of conversation, a lot of talking. And, you know, IBM isn't immune to this. We're a great company. We've done a lot of great things and continue to. But just like any company, we also have our little challenges. And sometimes we talk a lot of big ideas because we get very excited. And then that's kind of where it all stays. We don't turn them into actions. We don't set very clear, measurable results around them. And it becomes very difficult then to move forward and actually execute these things. And so what I want to do is present all of you with a process for how to do that, for how to set those very clear, specific, measurable goals. Ultimately, I believe that if you can do this, you can take anything you've heard today and turn it into action. Whether or not you have the resources, I still think you could probably take a lot of this into action, because once it's clear, then you can really start to turn on your resourcefulness. You can really start to ask for those favors. You can call on your friends. You can call on networks. You can go to other events such as these. Meet people, but you'll have very specific asks, because it'll no longer be this, I have this really awesome idea that I want to tell you about. But rather, I'll get right to the point and then ask you a question. I need your help with something. And the only way to be able to do that and advance any of our ideas, any of our goals, any of our missions, is to have them clearly and specifically defined. And so I want to start off. I want to start with a quote that Clayton Christensen shares, that he heard from a professor of his. Clayton Christensen is a professor at Harvard. He wrote in the late 90s a really incredible book called The Innovator's Dilemma, followed that up with The Innovator's Solution, and and many other books in between, and most recently published a book called Competing Against Luck. But he mentions this particular quote: people don't want 5mm drills, they want 5mm holes. And what I like about this question is how it frames our minds and what we start to think about before we set our goals, what we start to think about before we design our solutions in order to achieve our goals. And that is, what is the problem that we're trying to solve? See, when we're producing something for our customers, nobody wakes up and says, I really want this drill, or I really want this guy to come up and speak on our stage. No, they're not thinking about those things. They're thinking about, gosh, I need to build this room, or I need to build this piece of furniture, or I need to build this house, or I need to get better results out of my employees, or how do I help them learn the best practices for becoming peak performers? Whatever that's what people are waking up thinking about. That's the hole, the proverbial hole that they're trying to drill. And then your solution, your idea, your product, your goal, whatever it might be, that's the drill. And that's the part that later, once you make it clear what that gap is, what the problem is, what the hole is, it becomes a lot easier to get buy-in, because people can see very clearly the problem in a very specific and measurable way, and your solution, and how your solution, your goal, your idea, your proposal, your initiative, your program you name it, how it fits with that problem and how it fits perfectly. No more, no less. And that product market fit is what helps us execute and be successful in our execution. So let me tell you a little bit about what I do. So I'm a learning strategist, and what that means is that I help people very clearly identify their goals in a specific and measurable way. See, I don't think it's enough to say, I'm here to learn Algebra 1, or I'd like to learn the piano. I want to know, how good do you want to be at the piano? Where do you want to perform this piano? Do you have a picture of this piano? Do you know where you want to perform it, how you want to perform it, in front of who do you want to perform it? I want to know all of these details. Because if we're going to set a path to getting to that result, I need to know very specifically what it is that you want. And so from there, we can design the appropriate learning strategies, the appropriate learning path. Goals are not that different, by the way. Goals are very similar. And so as an executive coach, it's very similar. I want to know, what result do you want for your business? What are you trying to achieve, so that we can reverse engineer a path to getting there? I also used to be a math educator. I spent, 8 years teaching, 4 in the classroom. Enjoyed this a lot, but I learned a lot actually about setting very clear and specific goals, because when you have middle school students at an all-girl private school and you're teaching them math, wow, this is an interesting group of people. I don't know what it is with that age group and young ladies, but oh my gosh. But they were incredible. They were a lot of fun. They always rise to the challenge, but what they needed was clarity. What they needed was clarity around their learning goals. What were we doing today? And then they needed the challenges. What were the problems along their path to getting there? So that I can then come in and facilitate that learning experience. And lastly, I'm an IBMer. Very proud IBMer for almost 2 years now in a couple of months. And so let's talk about what every great goal has. Now, you're going to see a lot of bullets here. I hit a lot of points. These are things that you can write down. They're very actionable. You can take them with you. There are going to be questions, so I'm just preparing you for that. Every great goal, every great innovation, every great solution, every great program is going to have a specific and measurable result to attain. A very specific and measurable result to attain. And that means really painting a very clear picture of what it is that victory looks like. As we start to paint that picture of what victory looks like, what that result looks like, then we start to find there are jobs to be done. Not just one, really, but there are many jobs to be done in order to get there. I'm not going to get to my result without completing a lot of different jobs. Along the way to accomplishing those jobs, there are objectives that need to be met. These are the very specific objectives that then we can create targets around. And lastly, because any result worth attaining is going to have its problems and its challenges and its obstacles and its path, clearly defining the problems. Because if you understand that when you're setting the goal up front, you can then begin problem solving. You can then begin troubleshooting the path and how you're going to get there and what are the things you need to overcome. Because you will encounter challenges. You will encounter problems. And so I always want my clients, I always want anybody that I work with, my students, whoever they might be, to be very clear about what those problems are that are going to come up along the way. Here's why these things are so important. A measurable result does something very important. It defines our successful effort. I will know when I got there. I will know when I've achieved that success. Otherwise, here's what happens. I come to work every single day and I do the same thing over and over and over again. Years pass and then I say, oh gosh, what have I been doing for the last 5 years, 10 years, whatever it might be? This happens, school, whatever. In many things, we let time pass. But if we have clearly defined results that we want in whatever it is that we do, we know when we've made it. We can celebrate. We can say, I hit my target. I'm going to stop for a moment. I'm going to celebrate, take this in, and set a new one. But I need to know what that is. And so by knowing it, I know when I've arrived. The other is a job to be done, because these are the things that drive your desired results. Results are that destination. It's that picture we paint. But there are certain things I need to do to get there. Now, as we start to define problems along that journey, along getting that job done, Now I can start to really design effective goals, effective solutions, effective strategies around getting there. See, without having clearly defined problems, which of course come from very clearly defined results, it becomes very difficult to design a solution. Then we start doing things like brainstorming, but brainstorming a little too wildly. I like brainstorming, but I like brainstorming within constraints. I want to have some guidelines for this brainstorming. And if my guidelines are the problems that I'm trying to solve, which are again very specifically detailed, measurably detailed, then I can begin to design solutions. And lastly, the objectives are going to give me that valuable corrective feedback. Because as we pursue our CSR goals, as we pursue our initiatives around CSR, we need to know whether we are on the right path or not, whether we're moving in the direction that we want to move and at the rate that we want to move. So it's going to be incredibly important that we know we have numbers, we have specific objectives that will then provide us with feedback. I'll know if I'm not making it, if I'm not achieving that objective. I'm going to know there was a problem, and then I can actually do something about it. So here are some essential questions. These are questions that, as a coach, I'll guide my clients through. This is always my first one. I want to know what that measurable result is that you desire. You can tell me that I want to learn AI. Okay, tell me more about AI. What do you want to do with it? How much do you want to know? Do you want to build the next Iron Man suit? I don't know. I need to know how far you want to go, or a chatbot. Very different technologies. I need to know very specifically what it is that you want. What jobs need to get done in order to deliver that result? Now, this is where working with a client, I can help them through the questions, and this is where a coach is very valuable, a mentor, someone you can work with who can be a little more objective. They can help you figure out what are the jobs that need to get done in order to deliver that result. I want to build a chatbot. Okay, let's see, I could activate a mentor at this point, because a mentor might be able to tell me a little bit about the technologies that I'll need in order to build a chatbot. I might engage with a coach, because a coach might help me set the plan for how I'm going to learn to build a chatbot. This question, helping me figure out what are the jobs that need to get done, is very important because it's going to help me figure out the plan to getting there. Another question, what are the objectives I need to achieve in order to get my job done, and the various jobs done? What are the objectives? How do I measure the job to be done? And last, what specific problems are standing in the way? What are the challenges that are standing in my way to getting this job done? Because without the problems, without clearly defined problems that are going to come in the way of achieving this result, it becomes very hard for me to seek the help, the resources, the tools, the ideas, the solutions that I'm going to need in order to achieve that goal. So here are some ways that we can design these goals. First, define results and be bold. Go big. Why not? You can always fix them later, tweak them, adjust them as reality happens, not before the reality happens. Give it a shot. And how do you do that? More specifically, let's start with the qualitative part of it. Paint it with words. Tell me the story. Get me excited. Tell me that story that you're going to tell me when we network outside of this room. When you're like, oh, I've got this incredible idea, this thing really I want to achieve, whatever it might be. And tell me that story of where you want to perform the piano, who you want to perform it for. What piece do you want to perform? I want to know all of that. Tell me that story, paint it in words. What is it? Think about what it is. Who's involved? I want to know who's there, who's at the finish line. Let's get a really clear picture of what it is that we're trying to achieve. Again, without this clarity, it becomes very difficult to design solutions, to pull in the right resources, to pull in the right solutions. Without this part, here's what happens. You start to buy solutions that don't really make sense. We start to implement ideas that really don't get us any closer. And then, by the way, if we're talking large organizations, Your teammates, the people who are then responsible for using these tools that have been acquired, purchased, whatever it might be, start to feel confused and lost. This makes no sense. Why do we have to use this system? I love challenging systems every time a new one comes along. But it's because I want to understand the problems that they're solving and where we're trying to go with it. Quantitative, define it with numbers. So think about, what are the metrics? What are the targets that we can use to measure this? Somebody recently sent me a pitch that they're working on and asked me to review it for an idea. It's for a career, for a job matchmaking solution. They want to match people looking for very particular types of jobs with those who are looking for those roles. And as this person described the problem, well, first it was a paragraph of description, and it wasn't very much. It said that the people searching for employees for these roles, don't have time to do this. It's a tedious task. It's difficult to find the people that they want. And then the other side of that market, the other side of that coin, the people looking for the jobs, apparently then the argument was that it's really hard to find the right kind of job and fit. Here's a challenge for me with that as I'm reading that. I see no clarity there. I want to define hard. I want to know, what is hard about it? What's time consuming about it? What are the specifics around that? Because if I know exactly what's time consuming, then I can measure it. And if I can measure it, then I can track it. I can design solutions around it. So I started brainstorming. I started thinking, well, I'd love to know how long it takes from the point when a candidate comes to the hiring person to the point where they get to the interview, and how many make it. So there's two metrics: how long it takes to get to the interview and how many actually make it. So I want to understand that funnel a little bit better. How many get hired? Of the ones who get hired, how long do they last? How many have been employed for over a year, under a year? And the metrics went on and on and on. It was a very long email. It went out of hand, but in a good way. Because now this person had a lot of metrics to go chase, and all of a sudden this person said, I can't present to the investors that I was going to at the end of the week. And I said, that's kind of, I think, a good thing. Because the more clarity you can get around this, the more easily you'll be able to address this problem and measure it. And lastly, does the math add up? This is one that I think we sometimes forget because we get excited about metrics, but this is a really important one. And when I'm coaching teams, I often find one thing that doesn't add up in their numbers. I'll give you a quick example of one that was where I saw a lot of excitement and enthusiasm around the target. And when I did the math, all of a sudden I realized, wow, you'll never make this. And if you do, you will have a far worse problem. I hope you don't achieve your goal. I hope you don't achieve your result. And it was for growing attendance figures over the course of a period of time. I think it was over 6 months or a year. I can't remember exactly. I think it was a year-long period. This organization hosts a variety of events, and they have attendance figures. And they said, we're looking to double our attendance. I said, wow, that's awesome. That's a bold goal. I mean, I love it. I love the boldness. They hit that top part really well. And so then I started to ask questions. Out of curiosity, what venues do you have at your reach in order to host these events? Oh, we use 2 venues, but one of them is the one we use most of the time. I said, okay, what were your attendance figures in that venue? Oh, we had about 50 people, let's say. I don't remember the exact numbers. Okay, what was the capacity of that room? About 55. Interesting, all right. They still didn't catch on, and as a coach, you don't want to give away the answers. You're hoping that your client will all of a sudden have that moment, wait, where would we fit all these people? And they wanted to do this with the same number of events. So they were very specific. I asked them about being specific, and I mentioned that a lot. They said, we specifically want to have 20-something or 30 events. How many events did you have last year? Same number. Okay. They felt that it was a great mix. They could execute that. But what they missed was that in order to achieve their goal, they either needed a bigger venue or more events if they wanted to draw more attendees and overall have a larger number, double that target. It's easy to miss this when you're excited about your result, when you're excited about that bold idea. But if you don't have the capacity to achieve that goal, if you don't have the place to put all of that, that's not the kind of failure that's good. That's the kind of failure that could have been avoided. And we could have planned and designed for it in order to then fix that. More events, new venues, whatever it might be. But see, if we don't do the math, and if we don't have someone objective from the outside who's not involved in your everyday, just listening to what you're saying, it becomes a little hard. We get excited. I understand that. I get excited about my ideas. And when I'm writing a new talk or when I'm writing a new workshop, I start writing, and then I realize, hold on, wait, who is this for anyway? I was excited to say all this, but maybe there wasn't anything that would be of value. And this is the other thing that I ask clients to figure out. I want you to identify a purpose. Now, these are the questions that I ask. Sometimes I'll send this in a written form and I'll say, start answering these ahead of time. Other times we'll have this in a conversation. But these are the types of questions that I want leaders at IBM and my external clients to ask of themselves. I want them to connect their results, their goals, their intentions with purpose. It's for the fuel. It's what powers us because things are not going to go well. I always tell anybody who's trying to learn something, this is going to suck. If you've never done this, it is going to be horrible. You are going to be horrible. If you've never spoken on stage, there's these events that I facilitate, 2.5 days where I get people to come up and present an idea in 60 seconds. I go, horrible. I want you to set that as the expectation. Horrible. That's the reality of it. I'm hoping that your next one is a little less horrible. And the one after that, less horrible than the previous one. This is to be expected. So how do I help that person continue? How do I help them push through how horrible all of this is going to be at the beginning? Why do you want to do this? What's the purpose? How does it align? And if you work for a company, how does it align with the greater organization goals? In my case, when I work with IBMers, how does this align with IBM's greater goals? We don't all report to the CEO, but there are really big goals, targets, ambitions, vision that comes from our top leadership. So I want to know what are those things so that I can try to find alignment in that. If I can find some alignment to the values of the organization, I could do that. What greater result does your result enable? What am I going to drive and support? If I do this, if I achieve this result, what do I unlock? That's essentially what I'm asking there. What can we unlock? Who is impacted by our result? Does someone gain? Does someone lose? Do we have one of each? Do we have mostly winners, mostly losers? Let's think about this. This invites some other questions such as, let's discuss the ecosystem within your problem, within your solution, all the players involved. Even if they're not directly involved, there are people who might be affected. And this is, by the way, in that question is where you can begin to explore CSR issues, opportunities, problems. Because maybe we're doing something that's already running counter to our intentions. How does your team grow from this result? For leaders, I always want them to define that. I want to know how your team grows. How do you grow from this? And lastly, where's the impact felt? Are there any spillover impacts? Are there opportunities for win-win-win? Maybe another win. But if you think about that, you can get there. And I think we're going to share these slides. But these are some of the practices that I share with clients at workshops around effective goal design. Always start at the top. What are your big goals? What are your big ambitions? What do you want? What do you personally want? What does the organization look to achieve? Think about then start defining your result qualitatively and quantitatively. Let's get both of those in there. It's not easy, but there are ways. And go to somebody on the outside because that outside perspective is usually very helpful in finding those measurable, those metrics. Identify the alignment, whatever that might be, your personal purpose. Reverse engineer your path to getting there. But here's the thing. I don't want you to reverse engineer and feel like I have to get the entire plan figured out. I want you to just focus on the first 3 to 5 steps. And then the rest, just kind of the big ones. Because I can guarantee you your plan is going to change along the way. There is no way you are going to follow the plan you wrote on day one. So you might as well not invest so much time in the last 80%. Focus on the 20% that comes first. Even less, maybe 10%. Prioritize your actions, set targets, deadlines. Make sure you have deadlines, just so you know if you're moving or not. Doesn't mean, look, if you don't hit your deadlines, that's not the worst thing in the world. It could be that something came up. There was a new priority. That's fine. Accept it, be aware of it, and then redesign, replan. And lastly, perform a reality check. Don't end up doubling your audience only to find out that, oh gosh, I can't let them into the room anymore. Thank you so much for your time. I hope this was helpful. Find a way to connect this into your goals and use this framework.
If someone from the audience has a question, Roger, I have one for you. Hearkening back to our keynote speaker's title today, in the soup of metrics that might be possible, how do we identify the ones that really matter and then advance our goals?
Great question. To empower all of you to go learn more about this, there's a great book called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. They talk about something very specific, lag and lead measures. Lots of metrics out there, a soup of them like you mentioned. But which ones are your lag, which ones are your lead? Lag measures are the ones that are reported after the fact, meaning I find out whether this happens when it's already too late and I can't affect any change in my, whatever it is, my idea, my goal, my initiative. My lead measures are the ones that affect the work, that affect the lag measure. These are the ones that drive the results. So when I'm looking at metrics, and for instance, we get these awesome long emails at IBM from our leaders with all these metrics and numbers and everything. I start sorting them out. I go lag, lag, lag. To me, those don't matter right now because I can't do anything about them until they're reported. So by then it's usually too late. And then I start to look at the lead ones. These are action. I can do something about this. I can pick 2 or 3 that my role, my team, my set of resources, my organization can really get behind, and these are the ones that I'm going to drive. All of a sudden, 10 metrics, there's only 2 that matter to me because I know those are the 2 that I can affect the most. And if I affect those, I will drive I will do my part to drive the lag measures. Same thing goes for your own goals though, and then you're the only person if this is for a person. The 4 Disciplines of Execution, 4DX. The 4 Disciplines, and it's by Covey and Company. So, great authors.
Thank you to Roger.
No problem. Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.